Brian Obuya, who will be giving us an update on the NYS probe. Let's get straight to it with the highlights. Court orders for the release of former NYS Director Richard Ndumabi and PS Lillian Omolo, despite objection by the DPP. The 2017-2022 strategic policy for the National Equalization Fund is rolled out. Plus, hope for lasting peace in South Sudan proves even more elusive as IGAD leaders meet to plot a way forward for the country. And all eyes on Russia when Nigeria gets into action to try and avoid another humiliating defeat, even as favorites Argentina is all but out of the tournament. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you with us here on KTN News Desk. The Director of Public Prosecutions has lost his bid to suspend the verification of sureties for the release of suspects in the 9 billion shilling National Youth Service scam. Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi has ruled that he will examine the sureties and that the court will determine which ones to accept or reject. He said suspending the implementation of the High Court ruling for the release of the 48 suspects would be arbitrary. The suspects spent yet another night behind bars on Thursday as DPP Nordin Haji sought to ensure they do not use proceeds of crime to secure their freedom. Youth Affairs PS Lillian Omolo and NYS Director General Richard Ndubai filed separate applications at the High Court seeking freedom pending trial. All right, we now want to cross over to our city center newsroom where Brian Obuya is currently joining us. Brian, good afternoon. Of course, the Chief Magistrate has ruled that he will examine the sureties. Has he given a timeline?
It's good to speak to News Desk this afternoon, Ashley, and the Chief Magistrate hasn't given any timelines on when this process should be complete, but he maintains that this is a process, this is a judicial process, and therefore this cannot be taking place when the suspects are still being held. You want to remember that on Tuesday, Justice Ogundi released all the 47 suspects, asking them to pay some bail of about 1 million shillings and a number of other requirements, the bond requirements. And then on Wednesday, the DPP writes to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations on Kiambu Road, asking Mr. Kinoti to ensure that all properties, all the securities and sureties that have been given to, that are said to be given as bond, are not proceeds of crime. They go ahead to note in that letter that most of the property, or rather some of the properties that were secured as security, were actually part and parcel of the investigation they were conducting into the 9 billion alleged high heist that has threatened once again the economy of the country in the wake of a number of scandals that are hitting the country left, right, and center. So actually, today's ruling was that we cannot keep suspects, we cannot keep them in remand anymore. It's their right, and the lawyers have argued this in court, that they should be freed as this process continues. Yesterday, the assistant DPP, Mr. Karuri, had asked for more time, about 7 more days to conduct investigations and report back to court on who exactly owns the properties and whether they have been bought with proceeds of graft. But the court has today stood its ground, saying that it's a constitutional right for the suspects to be released, as the High Court had ruled, and the Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi being very clear on that aspect, saying that any other orders or any other ruling he will give that contradicts what the High Court had said on Tuesday will ultimately be contempt. It will be arbitrary to that decision. So It's a long walk that has probably finally come to an end as PS Omolo and the Director General of NYS walk to freedom after such a long battle in court. We will actually be playing you part of that ruling later on in this bulletin. We are still working on it, and you get to realize that this becomes just part of the theatrics we've been seeing around the NYS scam, and whereby we have about over 40 suspects in court for under investigations for some 468 million, which is barely 1% or thereabout of the alleged 9 billion shillings. So these are matter we are still following up on, and just in case of any developments, we'll be actually getting back to you. You want also to remember that there have been a number of intrigues around the NYS scandal, given that the criminal and investigation department itself has been implicated with one Gishini Ngerita, claiming that even the top investigator has been involved in the very graft, saying that he was a business partner. So there's blows being hit on this thing left, right, and center. But we are always here for the whole story. And in case of anything, we get back to you with it as and when it happens. Ashley.
All right. Many thanks, Brian Obuya, for that update. Brian Obuya joining us from our newsroom here at the city center. Now, the National Assembly Joint Parliamentary Committee that is investigating the contaminated sugar, which was imported into the country mid last year, has already written to 4 cabinet secretaries to appear before the Monday next week. Chief executive of various institutions that fall under their docket are also expected to appear before the committee to explain how poisonous sugar was imported into the country. Members will also visit godowns where contraband sugar was seized, as well as the port of Mombasa. The joint committee will Thursday next week also investigate companies adversely mentioned in the saga, as well as getting views from the public on the sugar crisis. All right, we now want to speak to our reporter, Patrick Amimo, who is joining us from Parliament. Amimo, good afternoon. Of course, we are seeing some contradicting statements there from different laboratories. Have the members of Parliament commented on this?
No, thank you, Ashley. Already the Joint Parliamentary Committee that's in the National Assembly, that is of agriculture, and together with their counterpart on trade and industry, will now already they have 10 days to probe into this particular sugar saga, where they say that imported sugar in the country has been found to be poisonous. There is a contention about the mercury content into that sugar, but as far as matters copper is concerned, it appears they are agreed, the parties are agreed that there is copper in that sugar, and it has exceeded the limits allowed, because copper should be at least 2 milligrams per kilogram. But in these, for the test samples so far from the Kenya Bureau of Standards, that sugar that the samples they did test exceeded these, because they had 20.7 milligrams per kilogram. So this is unfit for human consumption, and that's why members here, it's a matter of urgency, because it touches on public health. And on Monday, that's when they'll officially start receiving evidence from various, where 4 cabinet secretaries will appear before them. The first on line will be Agriculture CS Mwangi Kiunjuri, who will come with teams that are under his docket to explain how sugar importation is done, especially the Agricultural Food Association, EFA, will be mandated to explain to Kenyans on what is happening. Then will be followed by the Trade Ministry and Industrialization, where KEBS follows. Where KEBS falls, also we'll have the Minister for Interior. Dr. Matiang will come with those members involving the DCI to explain their part of the story, especially on that contentious aspect on mercury, and where maybe which laboratories did test these. And also, lastly, we'll have that Minister for Industrialization just giving his part of the idea. The idea here, basically, the terms of reference will be be to get to know when this gazettement was done and how these sugar imports came into the country, because we told that about 4 million bags are out there, got into the country. They'll be getting to know why and whether people exploited the loopholes to bring in to import duty, to bring in more sugar and evade paying tax. So that is what will be happening here starting next week, and definitely members of the public will have an opportunity before the committee on Thursday to have to give their views on what they know about sugar imports in the country and whether it meets the standards. The other aspect also will be that these are the major stakeholders in the sugar industry will also have their date with the committees on Thursday, especially those companies that have been adversely mentioned like West Kenya and Sukari. So that is what is happening here, Ashley.
All right, many thanks, Patrick Amimo, joining us from the Parliament buildings. Of course, it will be interesting to see how this saga goes come next week. Still on matters to deal with illicit sugar, a group of consumer rights organizations have called out the government over the conflicting reports concerning the toxicological lab results of the seized sugar across the country. The organizations, among them the Consumer Downtown Association and the Kenya Consumer Organization, now want stiffer penalties for traders who jeopardize consumer safety and greater accountability from the government.
There is lack of coordination within the government agencies, the ministry. You listen to KEBS, they speak a different thing. When you listen to the ministry, the cabinet secretary for interior coordination, he speaks a different thing. But then here is the consumer who is left in the middle and whose life is already at risk. What we do as consumer organization is to take this information and just to warn them to be wary of the particular sugar in question, the particular product in question. It does not only go to the sugar itself, but then it also touches on other food products, like we've mentioned about the dairy, where you could not even differentiate between which is adulterated and which is safe for consumption.
We are actually inviting consumers to submit as more information as possible to the consumer organizations that are here, so that we are able to build a very strong case against government and bodies that have shown laxity in their duties.
We are short of calling a full boycott. Yeah. A full boycott. As of now, we are saying there are other products. Just keep out of them. Precautionary principle. But then, as we give government time to bring its house to order, if it takes another couple of days, we are short of calling a full boycott of all the sugar products in this country.
This is a story that Mark Namaswa has been following up on and now joins us from our City Center studio. Mark, what are some of the recommendations that were recommended so that to ensure that Kenya has food safety?
Now, they spoke concerning the operationalization of the National Food Safety Policy, so that the country, as we move forward, we know exactly what we stand or where we stand concerning the safety of our food. They also spoke concerning the government having one voice when it comes to airing out their opinion or their findings concerning the safety of food that is across the shelves of supermarkets in the country. For instance, at the moment concerning the sugar imports, we have three various voices coming from government departments concerning the safety or the reports concerning the mercury, whether there's mercury or whether there isn't mercury. For instance, we have the DCI and Interior CS stating that there's mercury in our sugar. We also have the Kenya Bureau of Standards also giving their own opinion, stating that we have probably a high amount of moisture content as well as mold in and copper as well as lead levels in our sugar. And then we also have the International Relations CS Aidan Mohammed also stating, giving a different opinion. So they want Kenya as a nation to have one voice when it comes to airing out matters concerning food security, concerning the safety of food, concerning the health of the Mwananchi. They also spoke about the action they might take. There are about 6 consumer rights organizations. They spoke about marshalling masses going onto the streets and boycotting sugar commodities, while the government still hasn't found its voice concerning whether the sugar that we have in our shelves is safe or not. Ashley.
All right, many thanks, Mark Namaswa. They are joining us from our City Center studio and, of course, giving us an update on that illicit sugar saga that is currently going on. We take a short break here on KTN News Desk, but when we come back, we still have much more in store for you, so don't flip that channel.
This is KTN News.
Are you in need of urgent cash? Get an emergency loan from Meridian Acceptance Limited, financing up to 60% the value of your car at a very low interest rate, just under 6 hours, and enjoy a flexible repayment plan of up to 12 months. Visit our offices at Anniversary Towers, 1st Mezzanine Floor, and Mudhangari Road, plot number 38. Or call us at 0704 444 888. Meridian Acceptance Limited. Honesty, flexibility, trust. Catch the football fever with smart deals on Bond TVs. HDMI inputs, PC input, digital free-to-air, USB inputs, smart TV with Android, full HD resolution 1080p. Vaughn, made for you.
Why does the moon only come out at night?
So that it can sing you a sweet lullaby.
And stars?
They make sure nothing disturbs your sleep.
Then why do these mosquitoes come?
Then let's teach these mosquitoes a lesson, because Mama has Mortein Doom, which makes mosquitoes go away and not come back the whole night. So you get a peaceful night's sleep all night long.
Mortein Doom. A peaceful night is a Mortein Doom night.
Bet, huge jackpots, big winnings. Achieve your best today with 200% bonus on the first deposit. All bets on sports.
What is bet?
Huge winnings.
What is bet?
High odds.
What is bet?
Fast pay.
What is bet? What is bet?
Bookmaker Company.
Every Friday night, there's only one place where all celebrities come to get loose.
Hashtag Youth Cafe, the entertainment headquarters where we keep you up to speed on all of the latest gossip when it comes to fashion, music, and movies.
Plus, we have Person of the Week, this one segment where we celebrate a spectacular individual, both local and international.
Join me, Tandy Rayego.
And I, Brian Aseli, Friday from 8 till 9 p.m.
Only on KTN News.
Other shows mean business, but
we are the business, man.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. This is KTN News Desk, and many thanks for staying with us. Now, the second policy and criteria for sharing revenue among marginalized areas and CRA's strategic plan for the 2017-2022 was launched today morning. The Commission on Revenue Allocation is mandated to determine, publish and regularly review a policy in which it sets out the criteria by which the identity marginalized areas for purposes of sharing revenue from the equalization fund. The fund is to be used to provide basic services including water, roads, health facilities and electricity to marginalized areas to bring the quality of services in marginalized areas to the generally enjoyed by the rest of the nation so far as possible.
Revenue of 2013-14, the 936 billion, is the last audited and approved, and that is what has been shared to the Equalization Fund over the last 3 years. So since 2016-17 to where we are currently, 2018-19, 0.5 that goes into the Equalization Fund is of the 936 billion.
We created a monster for further marginalization of 3/4 of Kenya. And that was sessional paper number 10 of 1965. Sessional paper number 10 of 1965 must remain and will continue to remain the monster of marginalization in Kenya. The essence of it was this: concentrate your resources in areas where you can get quick returns.
When we talk about marginalization, we thought it was supposed to be, we get it right. If you read the Constitution, it actually talks about marginalized areas, and you underline the marginalized areas. It doesn't talk about counties. It doesn't talk about wards. It doesn't talk about districts. It doesn't talk about specifics, but it says areas. So in the mind of the people who are given that responsibility, it was expected by Kenyans that they'll visit and they do what is practically possible to rank them. And because you cannot address everybody at once, you actually pick the most marginalized.
The regulations, it had a 10%, what they call it, administrative costs. We proposed, they changed them, they didn't change them. Now they're saying it's 4% or 4.65. That never came to Parliament, so it's somehow discretionary. But let me tell you what the tragedy is. The allocation for the administrative costs of that board was 569 million. It was spent in 3 occasions by hiring choppers to just fly around. I'm not going to be nice. You can't talk about marginalization when you're misusing funds, when people are suffering, when we are watching pictures like this. It's a terrible thing. I have proposed drastically that when CRA was identifying these marginalized areas, they should have saved this country a lot of time by coming up with the projects.
To aviation matters now, our partner station, Radio Maisha, today launched the first of a series of roadshows around different parts of Nairobi, which marks the launch of the partnership between the local radio station and the East African School of Aviation. This in a bid to reach Kenyan youths and encourage enrollment. The East African School of Aviation is the training directorate of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority and is a regional training center of excellence accredited by International Civil Aviation. The school is mandated to train in regulated courses that lead up to licenses. According to the East African Aviation Director, Dr. Mugambi Nshebere, some of the schools that train in aviation may not have the required
Radio Maisha and the East African School of Aviation, where we are going to do a roadshow across the different parts of Nairobi. So we are coming to an area near you, to basically tell you about the East African School of Aviation, because the partnership is all about education. As a media house, we believe in the three pillars of broadcasting, which is entertainment, education, and information. And in this case, we've partnered with the East African School of Aviation to actually reach out to the youth across Kenya to join and sign up in big numbers so that we can produce excellence through this school to protect our airspace.
Just 2 days after the globe marked the World Refugee Day, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees has announced that more than 1.1 billion shillings worth of infrastructure in form of schools and hospitals in Dadaab camp now lay idle following the closure of 2 camps in Dadaab. The infrastructure includes several fully furnished hospitals and schools, which UNHCR hopes to hand over to the government, even as locals remain pessimistic that the facilities will indeed be used to benefit the community within and around the camp. Timothy Otieno reports.
Since the repatriation exercise was announced by the government 2 years ago, over 14,000 refugees, mostly from Somalia, are reported to have gone back home. Already 2 sectors within the expansive Dadaab camp have since been closed. Kambios sector shut down in March 2017, and E42 camp, whose last resident left on the 26th of May this year. And with the mass exodus, empty facilities such as these are left behind, with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees contemplating a handover ceremony for several schools and hospitals within the 2 closed camps.
We are engaged in constructive dialogue to see how soon we can organize the official handover ceremonies.
The UN agency is expected to hand over more than 10 education facilities, including schools in Kambios sector with a capacity of over 8,000 learners, and similar structures in E42 sector with over 16,000 capacity for both primary and secondary school learners.
In Kambios, we had 3 primary schools and we had 3 early childhood development centers. Those are the kindergarten, the early childhood centers. In E42, we had 10 early childhood development centers. We had 10 primary schools. We had, of these 10 primary schools, 6 were temporary structures and 4 permanent structures, including a story building classes.
The E42 hospital remains deserted. Just 6 months ago, medical staff here would be a busy lot. Today, the equipment lay idle, with the facility with a bed space of 100 left at the mercy of the Garissa County government.
There is emergency room, there is a lab, there is a 2 operation theater, there is adult wards, pediatric ward, and stabilization center. There was also in the hospital the area for outpatient consultations, specialist consultation, which we did non-communicable diseases and mental health.
The infrastructure in E42 is worth $7 million. 7 million. Infrastructure in Kambios is worth 4.5 million.
The United Nations High Commission for Refugees has announced a drop in the number of refugees at the Dadaab camp from 245,000 3 years ago to 231,000 now. And with plans to hand over the facilities to the government, it's not yet clearly outlined how the communities left behind will directly benefit, with past accusations by residents of the area citing favorism of refugees over the locals who have limited access to quality education and healthcare. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Thank you, Timothy, for that update. And that's where we come to a close for our viewers on KTN Home. Many thanks for joining us here on KTN News Desk. I am Ashley Mazuri. Remember, KTN News Desk continues on our sister channel, KTN News. And when we come back after the short break, we'll be discussing issues to deal with corruption. How effective are we when it comes to fighting corruption? Of course, with me in studio is Mudhomi Thiankolu, who is a lawyer, and he'll be helping me just tackle some of those issues. So please don't miss out.
This is KTN News.
Miradi inakuja kwenu na Safaricom Twaweza Live. Twaweza ni mimi na wewe coming together to make great things happen.
Twaweza ni kuconnect watu na maisha bora.
Twaweza ni kuconnect maisha na afya njema.
Twaweza ni kuconnect kila mtu na madeals poa.
Twaweza ni kukuza talanta, kustomp makampo, and more as we connect people to opportunities.
Kusherehekea haya yote tunakuja na concert kubwa hapo kwenu. To join soon in a town karibu na wewe.
Safaricom Twaweza Live. When we come together, great things happen.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mama and Grandma cleaning the house. It was the cleanest on the street. I knew what Grandma's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secret passed down to me. It's Jik, of course, the original trusted bleach.
Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. Jik is Kenya's #1. Is it yours?
Beat germs with Jik. Kitchens, fridges, dustbins and tiles. Just Jik it.
KTN haiongei uongo, inakwambia ukweli.
How we as a society view mental illness has a direct impact on how we handle people with mental illness.
They didn't know the condition. So anaona vile ana smile, but later walimu wakuja wakasema mtoto ako na shida.
Tulianza kulia leo, na mtu makwatuka anaweza fika katikati asahau.
People in the society view mental health in terms of madness.
Tungeanza mapema kama kumleta hapo, hiyo shida imekuwa detected, ingetatuliwa mapema.
People assume a mental illness will not kill you, so they don't think it's as serious as the non-communicable diseases or all the other diseases.
Ijole nusom sifachu jira mi renti bahada le renti bahad
rivira warru wani warra hesa targati duri manke taayama nu fichu ungat orifatis akasini amma mali atakhayate tusuni yu atabar badde way tigadin dufini khom man sun kesa sagale argata
sababu wani anasafi abaya yo hesa demi ana milmeti yo kwa dance milmeti somsi fa dance kasome tujina anargatini male male na bilbin chef wa rabbi alim male wanti binkab
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. You're watching KTN News Desk. Many thanks for joining us and staying with us. As public confidence falls on the fight against corruption, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee summoned the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to account for their mandate.
Thursday afternoon, and the House was convening to discuss an important issue,
that has pushed many to despair. At a time when the country was saturated with endless discussions on how corruption was sinking the economy, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution were summoned here by Parliament to show cause why the efforts were seemingly going west.
There's a perception outside there that what the EFCC is doing is going for the small persons.
Perceptibly, the long-standing split between EACC and ODPP was partly blamed on why cases of high-level corruption in Kenya were not getting prosecuted.
All these tons of sugar in our country, which pass through our ports, which ports are manned by our security forces, your agents being represented. What went wrong?
Last week, the DPP said it will take back tens of cases to EACC for failing to pin watertight evidence to prosecute. EACC Chair retired Archbishop Eliud Abukala was on a trip in Jerusalem and was represented by the CEO Halake Wako and Vice Chair Sophia Lepuchirit. DPP Nurdin Haji captained his ship.
Honorable Chair, we received a total of 508 cases over the period between 2013 to 2018.
Committee members wondered why it was increasingly becoming evident that the investigations targeted the small fish and avoided the big culprits.
This analogy of a fish and the players of corruption has been so difficult. It's difficult in that the definition given by Kenyans sometimes is that when you talk of small fish, a chief.
And there were more concerns from the MPs.
They think it's not fair to close those files. Is it because of alleged corruption, allegations of bribery, or there was other evidence to be unearthed? Or is it because of the public mood of the country that this case should not be closed? Because it's very critical to know why you think this case should be closed. EACC on one part thinks this case should be closed, but the DPP are saying no, this case should not be closed.
The two bodies defended their mandate and said they too harbored serious concerns to tell Kenyans. On the NYS, the DPP has told the committee that he has obtained a letter from the Asset Recovery Authority indicating that an account was injected with 100 million shillings and 3 million went to settle base for NYS cases way before bail was sought and ensure the monies are not proceeds of crime. The EACC, DPP exchanges still on. Pressure remains high on investigating agencies funded by taxpayers to review their mandate and batten the hatches. Francis Ontomwa, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, and that story there by Francis Ontomwa forms the basis of our discussion today here on KTN News Desk. Of course, corruption has escalated in the country in the past few years. And just joining me in studio to just help me steer through that conversation is Mudomi Thiankolu, who is a lawyer. Thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News Desk.
Many thanks, Ashley, for
inviting. Do you think the government is up to the task of fighting corruption?
I don't think they are up to the task, and I don't believe this government or even the previous governments or even future governments stand any chance in the fight against corruption.
Why?
Because in my view, there are at least 20 fundamental mistakes we've made as a country since 1963, which I would call, for lack of better language, structural defects or structural deficiencies in the fight against corruption.
Yes.
And my fear with the current drama about corruption, there seems to be a lot of heightened excitement from the DPP, the EACC, and all these agencies. My fear is that what is happening is just a knee-jerk reaction, perhaps to manage public anger about this matter.
Yes.
But there is no well thought out, no serious thinking has gone into the problem of corruption in Kenya. And to the extent that has not happened, this fight is doomed, and it has always been doomed, and will always remain doomed.
All right, you've talked about 20 issues there.
Yes.
Just if you can just name a few of them.
Yes, we could name a few of these fundamental issues. One of them, now that I'm a lawyer, maybe is to begin by saying that if you look at the policy, legal, and institutional frameworks for fighting corruption in Kenya, They are fundamentally flawed. And yet these are supposed to be the tools that we use to fight corruption. Now, if you give any workman a bad set of tools, they can only do a bad job. So I would say the first thing is maybe to throw all our laws, our policies and institutions into the dustbin.
All right, but just before you go on to the second point, of course, you've talked about policies that are supposed to guide us. There's the issue of the ESCC. It's been there for 20 years now and counting. Has it been effective, considering it was created to fight corruption?
It has not been effective, and it cannot be effective in the prevailing legal policy and institutional setup. It cannot be effective in the prevailing political economy dynamics of Kenya. So that, for me, the problem is not the ESCC. I'm actually one of those who believe the ESCC has done extremely well, given the environment in which they're operating, which I told you is the prevailing legal policy and institutional framework. So for me, one of the first item out of the 20 fundamental problems we need to think about is the legal, the legal policy and institutional frameworks. Number two, we need to rethink a fundamental mistake we made way back in the 1970s in a document called the Degwa Report. And in this document, we made the policy choice that someone can be a government bureaucrat, a public servant, a cabinet secretary, but they nonetheless can do business with the state, whether directly or indirectly through various proxies like companies and partnerships and other business formations. The problem with that decision as we made it, and it was controversial even in those days, is that you put the government or the civil servant or the state officer in a situation where their private selfish interests are in conflict with their fiduciary duties to the state and to the citizens.
So does that mean that corruption has been politicized?
It has been politicized, but corruption is always a political issue anyway, not just in Kenya, but actually in all countries. For me, the problem is if you make a policy choice where you have public servants, state officers, politicians, right from the very top to the village or Nyumba Kumi alderman who can do business with the state, then you have put them in a situation where there are very strong incentives for them to take advantage of the public office they hold to access state business opportunities. You have to remember the state is the biggest customer in any economy, in any country in the world. So the incentives to actually take advantage of one's public office for private gain is real and is very strong. It doesn't matter what is the strength of the moral fiber of the officer in question. Even if they are angels, you still end up with the situation we have. So that will summarize my point number two.
Yes, three, briefly.
Why I believe this fight is doomed and has always been doomed. Number three, we've had a very unidirectional or narrow view of corruption in Kenya. We have usually had a discussion of corruption as though it's merely a legal issue or as though it is merely a moral issue. Until we're able to have a multidimensional view and a multidimensional, multidisciplinary appreciation of the problem of corruption in Kenya, its historical dimensions, its political dimensions, its economic dimensions, unless and until the average citizen is able to relate their daily struggles with corruption, their lack of decent housing, their lack of access to medicine, the proliferation of all these lifestyle diseases.
Yes, so what you're trying to say is the problem is we the citizens?
Of course. The citizen is the biggest stakeholder in this fight, and in my view, they have been the biggest problem because corruption is actually fought at the ballot. If you want to have effective anti-corruption measures, the biggest arena for fighting corruption is the ballot. The courts, the DCI, the police stations, these are just complementary. In fact, these are only means of last resort. In the more serious societies, If you're implicated in corruption, you commit suicide before even the police arrive. In Kenya, if you're implicated in corruption, you are a celebrity. You give autographs to school children in a function. We elect you to be governor, to be MP, to be whatever. We can even elect you to be president. So that in Kenya, the average citizen, until and unless they realize that their daily struggles are intricately linked to the high incidence of corruption,
yes,
nothing much will change. And ironically, I must say this, the people who seem most ambivalent about corruption, the middle class, people like you and I, we're the ones who actually suffer the most. If only we had time to discuss this, I will show you how the average person who has a car, a decent house, who takes their kids to a decent school, those are the people who actually work 3 jobs, who sleep the smallest number of hours in this rat race called life, because the state is not functioning. And the reason the state is not functioning is because of corruption.
Yes, no, but still on that point, because it's a very interesting point, and what you're saying might just be true. But then what can we do? Since we're the problem, you and I, where should we start?
We need to have a mindset to start viewing corruption as a matter that affects us in our day-to-day life. Even if you're rich and middle class and you believe corruption doesn't affect you, you maybe need to realize that if you have an accident in the middle of Nyambene Hills, where I come from, and the nearest level 5 hospital is not functioning, then your private health insurance card is useless. You still die, and therefore the reason you've died is because corruption has killed the public health system. If you're working so hard to take your child to a private school because the public school system is not working, then you're only denying yourself a high quality of life because corruption has killed the public school system. If you are taking a loan to build a house, to take a mortgage, in serious countries, it is the state that provides a house for its citizens. In Kenya, we work so hard, the so-called educated, middle-class people who are most nonchalant about corruption. You're just engaging in a rat race when perhaps if corruption was not of the levels we are talking about, you just walk to City Hall and you'll be allocated a house.
So then going forward, briefly,
if you bought a car, and I suspect you have, in serious countries, people don't buy cars. You take the public transport system, a bus, a metro train, whatnot. So all that money, in short, people like you and I have lived a rat race all our lives, doing what the state should have been doing for every citizen, not just you and I.
So then going forward, because we don't have as much time to discuss all the 20 issues that you have pointed out, briefly, what really needs to be done? Because you said we're not winning this war on corruption. So what do you think is the right way towards winning this corruption?
Let me shock you on the country. The first thing that needs to be done, in my view, is to pardon all the corrupt acts and omissions between 1963 and now, give them a blanket amnesty, because in my view, the corrupt are too entrenched. They have had a field day since the colonial times up to now. There is no state, no government that stands a chance in any fight. They overrun the best brains from the DPPs. They overrun the best brains from the police service. They overrun the best brains in our judiciary. Briefly. And maybe what we could do with them is just give a blanket amnesty, encourage these people instead of stashing all this money.
Why should we encourage them?
Because, as I said, you must take a pragmatic. The choice is between insisting, an eye for an eye, a pound of flesh and whatnot, which is what I said our laws seem to envision. Then you'll never get anywhere. You'll be in this vicious cycle or game of musical chairs where you're fighting corruption. Having given that blanket amnesty, you must make a radical decision to overhaul the legal, policy, and institutional frameworks. And number 3, then you need to be very ruthless going forward in your fighting corruption, which is another way of saying you must address the impunity and the political dynamics of our corruption prospectively now, moving forward, having given blanket amnesty.
Briefly, 30 seconds.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, 30
in short,
seconds.
30 seconds, the fight against corruption has been ill-thought. We need to have a serious, intellectual, and pragmatic discussion about it, revisit all our strategies from zero, and start this thing properly if we are serious about fighting corruption.
All right.
Anything short of that, just a game of musical chairs.
All right, very interesting insights there. Thank you very much, Mudomi Thiankolu, who is a lawyer, for joining us here on KTN News Desk. Now, the 43rd edition of the annual Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Conference is coming to an end today at the coastal city of Mombasa. Education stakeholders have in the past 5 days discussed on insecurity in learning institutions, among other key issues affecting the sector. The association has about 12,000 members, mostly from public schools. Let us now join our reporter Francis Mtalaki, who's attending the conference. Francis, good afternoon. If you can hear me, what conclusion have they come up with to tackling these issues that were supposed to be discussed?
Well, good afternoon, Ashley. And from the head teachers conference or the principals conference that has been going on here, it has just come to an end a few minutes ago, and some of the resolutions that have been agreed upon for the 8,000 plus teachers that have been able to attend this 5-day conference that has been happening here in Mombasa. And the topmost is with regard to security. They are saying that as principals in various schools, they need to be beefed up, and also the government to make sure that the security apparatus within the school has been beefed up so that they can be able to work closely with the students and making sure that the learning environment has been improved in terms of security. And also a key component in terms of health matters, they are saying that with regard to the NHIF cover that has been provided by the government, they want it to be improved in terms of to be able to cover foreign trips, so that if a head teacher or a principal is sick, can be able to fly out of this country and receive treatment for critical diseases such as cancer and other diseases. Also, something which came up to this program has to do with improving the level of education, and specifically for the two subjects, that is English and Swahili, saying that the government now has agreed to be able to provide funds so that all public schools will be provided with Fasihi and literature books, so that the students can be able to access those books and improve in terms of the languages that are provided. Those are some of the issues that have been able to be agreed upon with regard to the 43rd annual principals conference that has been taking place here in Mombasa. But a key component has to do with security, with regard to what has been happening in the country, and the issues around the students that have been accused or have been alleged that have been raped in various schools, and specifically for Nairobi County. Ashley.
All right, Mtalaki, before I let you go, one of the issues that came up during this conference was the issue of medical scheme. And what teachers were saying is that the children's medical scheme, the NHIF that is supposed to be provided to them, is superior. Have they discussed this issue?
Yes, they did discuss this issue at length, and they have a proposal with regard to this. That's why I mentioned saying that they need the cover to be improved for the principals and teachers at secondary school. But more importantly, also to touch on the students, there's also a parameter that needs to be discussed further in terms of who is going to provide the facility for students once the tender has been awarded to a certain facility. Then the Deputy President said that the provider of these services for NHIF and specifically for the students, he needs to be at the facility. But the principals are asking now, how practical is it? How is it going to happen with regard to this program? And the principals are raising questions, saying that if this is going to happen, then there needs to be a modality between the county government and the national government, together with the Ministry of Education to be able to harmonize the aspect of having this facility at the institution, given that many schools, they don't have that much needed space with regard to offering these services. And so that is some of the critical issues that the principals have raised, and so the government has to go back to the drawing board and see how are they going to implement this. Ashley.
Right, many thanks, Francis Mtalaki there, joining us from Mombasa, where the Head Teachers Conference is currently concluding. We'll take another short break here on KTN News Desk, but we still have much more in store for you. Don't go too far.
This is KTN News. Daring Abroad, in association with Equity PayPal.
My name is Irene Muti. I am a massage therapist trained in the US. I've worked with chiropractors, I have worked with pain management doctors, and most importantly, I worked with surgeons. I wanted to come back to Kenya. I started in Ngong, which was very difficult because people didn't know. And that's when people were looking at me like, is she crazy? Bringing massage close to a church. I would say I'm a massage therapist and people would just like, I'm a healthcare professional, a massage therapist.
PayPal is a faster, safer way to make and receive online payments. With the Equity Bank's PayPal withdrawal service, you can access funds received from anywhere around the globe. Even better, you can now withdraw funds from your PayPal account to your Equity Bank account at a reduced rate of as little as 1%. Visit Equity's self-service portal to link your PayPal account to your Equity Bank account today.
Na nataka tuambie viongozi wote kuwa tutafuata mienendo ya Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na Raila Amolo Odinga, na tunasema mambo ya lifestyle audit hakuna kurudi nyuma.
Brought to you by StarTimes.
StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.
This is KTN News.
Welcome to the second hour of KTN News Desk, and many thanks for joining us and staying with us. I am Ashley Mazuri. Now to a recap of our top story. The Director of Public Prosecutions has lost his bid to suspend the verification of sureties for the release of suspects in the 9 billion shillings National Youth Service scam. Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi has ruled that he will examine the sureties and that the court will determine which ones to accept or reject. He said suspending the implementation of the High Court ruling for the release of the 48 suspects would be arbitrary. The suspects spent yet another night behind bars on Thursday as DPP Nordin Haji sought to ensure they do not use proceeds of crime to secure their freedom. Youth Affairs PS Lillian Omolo and NYS Director General Richard Ndubai filed separate applications at the High Court seeking freedom pending trial. Let's listen in.
With due respect to the DPP, should this court uphold such a directive and proceed to suspend bail approval process until that particular condition is met as urged in his application, this court would be treading on a very dangerous path of risking being cited for contempt that granted the accused person's bail and only requiring this court to facilitate that process through approval of sureties and ensuring that the conditions it made are met. To explicitly declare that the process is put on hold or suspended would be countermanding this express order of the High Court. It is tantamount to inviting the court to stomp its feet on red-hot charcoal, which invitation, with utmost humility, the DPP, the court must decline. It cannot suspend the implementation of the orders of the High Court. How, then, can the concerns the DPP has raised with respect to the risks that could attach to some of the properties being offered as security by proposed sureties be addressed through the present bail verification processes? In my view, the matter can still be addressed, but through a different approach that does not impose a general restriction on accused right to bail that the High Court has granted. Looking at the DPP's letter, which Mr. Karori submitted to this court dated 20th June 2018, it reads in part, and I quote, "Concerns have been raised by the Assets Recovery Agency, ARA, that some funds intended to be used are not only suspect but subject to current cases," end of quote. That being the gist of the objection the DPP is expected to raise in respect to some and not all properties or securities, I would find the concern as falling within the provisions relating to sufficiency of security that runs through Section 124 to 127 of the Criminal Procedure Code. It is the duty of the court to ensure any security or surety offered is free from foreseeable risks arising out of any probable illegality, loss, or prolonged expense should it become necessary to realize the security. However, it is important to underscore the fact that this can only apply to specific property under consideration and cannot therefore be generalized. A broad-based restriction cannot therefore apply, as vetting will apply to a specific property or surety in question at any given time. It needs to be remembered that this case has over 40 different accused persons, and a surety or security brought by each of them must be assessed independently on their merits. It is therefore important that sweeping statements in objecting to any security or surety be avoided. The court would expect this, being a judicial process, any objections that are made are precise to a given property or surety and anchored primarily on facts that are capable of prima facie proof or reasonable factual basis of what is being arranged against the surety, preferably by way of an affidavit. As this is a court of law where
To sanitation issues, Marira Primary School in Kigumo, Murang'a County risks closure over poor sanitary conditions that now pose a health risk to pupils. This even as students from a girls' school in Machakos town walked for several kilometers to education officers in search for justice over what they term as poor management of the school.
This is the dilapidated condition staring at pupils and teachers at Marira Day and Boarding Primary School. The pit latrines are not only falling apart, but almost full, posing a health hazard.
Zinanuka sana, harufu yenyewe inatatiza hata masomo shuleni. Na wakati ambapo vyoo hivi vinajaa, kwaweza kuwa vimefurika hata ukinyesha ama choo chao kiwe juu ya wanakanyaga na kuna magonjwa mengine yanaweza kama kipidupidu.
Public health officers from the Ministry of Health have now issued a threat letter to close down the school due to the poor condition, including faded classrooms. This is after 21 days notice issued by the public health officers in April this year, mandating the school management to repaint the walls and construct enough latrines expired.
Ona kama hii shule itarudi nyuma kimasomo, na ningewauliza wale wako na usaidizi watusaidie tafadhali. Na kwa hii barua tumeambiwa ukuta si mzuri na unaweza leta madhara mengi kwa shule hii. Kwa hivyo tunauliza choo na ukuta zitengenezwe, at least tuwe na shule nzuri.
Na amri ya serikali hatuwezi kulazimisha mzazi atoe pesa, kwa sababu hiyo ni kinyume na vile serikali imesema. Kwa hivyo tunaomba kama tunaweza kupata usaidizi kutoka kwa either CDF, serikali ya county au serikali kuu, ili tusiweze kufungua shule yetu, kwa maana ikifungwa watoto wetu watateseka.
Elsewhere in Machakos town, students of Sunrise Secondary School, situated along Machakos Highway, trekked for 7 kilometers, protesting over what they termed as poor learning conditions.
Kwenye nauma walimu tunachenjwa kanguo, kwani sisi ni wanafunzi. And then tulio tumeambia principal tuite director tuongee, anasema director amesema twende, so tukatake action tukakuja hapa.
Ya Moi girls vile litokeanga kuhusu raping, tukaulizanga deputy what about the fence. Alisemanga you girls you are safe. Na watchman ni wangapi? Wawili. Uongo ukweli? Ukweli. Watchman ni wawili na waendangi throughout the night. Wanafikanga hadi saa 5 usiku wanaenda na dodge.
Director of the school on phone, Mr. Michael, said that the girls' complaints were not genuine and called upon the CS for Education to intervene in the matter before it boils over. Cecilia Kesho, KTN News.
Very unfortunate there. But Kenyan artists, among them Wahu, Nyashinsky, Jugush, Bahati and Masi Masika, are in Meru County for the Safaricom Toweza concert to be held at Kinoru Stadium. Here's a test of what has been happening there this morning.
Exactly. And it's so weird. It was so cold in the morning. Saizi nasikia nitoe jacket.
You see how God loves us?
Sindio kabisa.
Because we are so welcoming.
Absolutely.
We don't want visitors like you to run away.
Stage ni yako kabla tuongee sana.
Asante.
Dakunda kalia, daroma kadada, daroma to sabe, daroma to so, no jeso,
It looks lit, and yeah, thanks God it's Friday. So a Friday briefing team will be there tonight. Be sure to catch up Betty Challo, who will be hosting Friday briefing from there. And also a KTN home team will be there the whole of this weekend. But away from that, East African leaders assembled on Thursday in Ethiopia to push for peace in South Sudan. But despite a long-awaited face-to-face meeting between the country's two warring heavyweights, reconciliation remained elusive. Attempts to reconcile the two protagonists have hit a snag in Addis Ababa as President Salva Kiir rejected his former deputy Riek Machar. In statements ahead of the meeting held by the regional bloc, the Intergovernmental Authority of Development IGAD, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition rebel group led by Riek Machar, called the current peace efforts unrealistic and warned the South Sudan government.
Fully implement the various peace agreements. However, if South Sudanese authorities and the different parties are unwilling and unable to halt the suffering of their people, we need to put them on notice that we are ready to act. We have the moral as well as the legal responsibility to take action. The crisis in South Sudan is not just another crisis in the neighboring country. It has grown to become a crisis in each of our respective countries in the region. Our vital national security interests are at stake. That's why business as usual is over.
To Malindi, where Member of Parliament Aisha Jumwa maintains that she will support Deputy President William Ruto for president, even if ODM fields a candidate in 2022, sending signals that she might be on her way out of ODM and NASA. Speaking at a press conference in Malindi, Jumwa, however, said that she supported the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga.
Hakuna wrangles zozote ama conflict zozote kati ya mimi na my party leader Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga wala yoyote yule katika chama. Na yale ambayo nimeyaona leo katika magazeti mimi siwezi kuyathibitisha. Maana yake sijapata mawasiliano rasmi kutoka kwa speaker wa National Assembly. Na nataka nimwambie Junet, kama alikuwa amekosa mtu wa kutisha, mimi niko tayari na yeye. Hawezi kunitisha. Kama Aisha Jumwa, kumuunga mkono na kumsupport Mr. William Samoei Ruto come 2022 for the presidency. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka watu walielewe, na mimi sita kuwa na kwa sababu nimechagua hivyo. And come 2022 vile nilisikia wakisema kwamba chama cha ODM kitakuwa na candidate, akiwepo sisi pia tutakuwepo. Kwa hivyo mimi sioni kama kuna makosa yote ambayo mimi nimeyafanya.
From Malindi to Machakos County, where hospitals yesterday downed tools over poor working conditions in all the facilities, they held demonstrations across Machakos town to the county assembly. The doctors and other workers claimed that the hospitals are ill-equipped with medicine and workers' protective gear. The hospital's mortuary attendants downed their tools a week ago due to lack of body preservatives. They were later addressed outside the county assembly by the MCA in charge of labor, Jeremiah Munguti.
Ni huyo CEO ambao wa finance anachelewesha mishahara ya wafanyikazi wetu wa earth. If it is hard to go, let her go, and we have a permanent solution in Machakos level 5. Number 2, tunataka kujua ya kwamba, kwa maana nimefikiwa na ujumbe wa kwamba kuna watu ambao wamefanya kazi kwa miaka 4 na hawajapata barua ya kuwa wamefanya kazi Machakos.
Haya maneno ambayo mnazungumzia tunawajua. Tunawajua vizuri sana kwa sababu sisi ndio ambao tunawakilisha hao ambao mnatibu. Kwa hivyo tunawajua vizuri sana, yanafika katika area zetu za uwakilishi mbungeni. Unajua Tuesday tulikuwa na statement ambayo ililetwa na area MCA ambaye inaitwa Joseph Mutiso katika bunge letu, ikihusiana na maneno ambayo yanaendelea katika hospitali yetu. Ni kwamba tunajua services ama huduma pale zimepofika, zimeenda chini kabisa. Hivi kwamba naona hata mnasema renal department imefungwa, inasemekana ICU imefungwa, na kwamba kati na kwamba leo imekuwa ni mkutano mwema kwa sababu nyinyi sasa leo hamjakuja kudai mshahara. Yes. Leo mmekuja kudai services, mmekuja kudai wagonjwa wapate haki yao. Nasi kama wakilishi watu ambao hao ni wagonjwa na pia nyinyi, unajua pia hata sisi msimamo wetu ni huo kwamba itakuwa vyema tupeane services kwa yule yote you actually in the whole.
And in Thika, fuming Goliba residents in Thika protest against chiefs over land grabbing. Residents of Ngoliba ward in Thika East Sub-County have protested augmented grabbing of public utilities and private land. The residents said the time had come to wipe out land grabbers in the area at a time that the country was pushing to tame corruption. They accused the local administration of plotting to kick out 85-year-old granny from her ancestral land for demarcation and resale to unsuspecting Kenyans. Expressing her anguishes, the distraught granny said that she had stayed at the land for 40 years and was legitimately given by former President Moi's government through a local chief.
Kwa hiyo maneno, manake mimi nashindwa sijui nitafanya nini.
Hapo mama kila siku amekuwa akifuatwa na vitisho kutoka kwa chief ambaye anaitwa Alice Njoki na sub chief ambaye anaitwa Jane Karuga. Wamekuwa wakimtisha hapa kila siku. Hata saa hii venye tumekuja tumeona bwana ya chief akijaribu kutoa vurugu hapa, kutufukuza tusitoe ili shosho asiseme ukweli wa mambo. Lakini kitu yenye tunataka kusema ni ya kwamba sisi kama wakaaji wa Ngoliba tumekasirika sana kwa sababu ya hii mambo, kwa sababu shosho alikuja hapa 1984.
We take another commercial break here on KTN News Desk, but when we come back, we'll be taking a look at what's making headlines beyond our borders. Don't go too far.